Okay, so let's just jump right in. How on earth did a small island nation manage to conquer a subcontinent, a place more than 20 times its size, thousands of miles away? It sounds impossible, right? Well, in this explainer, we're going to unpack exactly that. This is one of history's most improbable and honestly most consequential events: how Britain conquered India.
You know, the central puzzle here, the thing that makes this story so fascinating, is just how unlikely it all was. I mean, when you look back, it seems, well, almost impossible. How could this have possibly happened? That is the question we're going to tackle today.
So, yeah, how was it possible? The short answer is it wasn't just one thing. Not by a long shot. It was this unique, almost perfect alignment of events and circumstances both in Britain and in India. And we're going to explore exactly what those were.
And this right here, this really puts the sheer scale of it all into perspective. Just look at that. On one side, you've got Great Britain, and on the other, the absolutely vast Indian subcontinent. We're not talking about a conflict between equals here, not in terms of size or population. This was a true geopolitical David and Goliath story, plain and simple.
All right, so where does the answer to all this begin? Well, it's in a pretty unexpected place. See, this whole story doesn't kick off with an invading army or some grand king's decree. No, it starts with a for-profit corporation, a company, just looking to make some money for its shareholders.
And this evolution, from merchants to rulers, it was slow. It took 40 years. It all began with a simple trading charter back in 1600. But then, in 1640, you get this huge pivotal moment. The company gets its hands on its very first piece of land. They build a fort, and just like that, the seeds of a future empire were officially planted.
And we really can't underestimate the economic drive behind all of this. I mean, listen to this quote from a historian. Men were prepared to die for spices because wealth itself could literally be measured in spices. Think about that. Back in the 17th century, this wasn't just about making food taste better. This was about status, power, and incredible profit. This was the rocket fuel for the company's ambition.
But, ambition alone wasn't going to be enough. The company's rise to power didn't happen in a vacuum. Far from it. It just so happened to coincide perfectly with a period of massive political upheaval and really fragmentation right inside India itself.
So, for centuries, you had the mighty Mughal Empire. They were the unifying central authority for so much of India. But by the time we get to the 1700s, this incredibly powerful entity is starting to fracture. And that, of course, creates instability and a huge opportunity for outsiders.
What you're seeing here is a true power vacuum starting to open up, and it was caused by what you can only call a perfect storm of factors. You had internal weakness from all these costly wars, devastating attacks from the outside, and a total loss of central control as local rulers started to say, hey, we're in charge now.
Now, it's not that there were no other powerful Indian states. There definitely were. The Maratha kingdom, for example, became a huge force for a while. But here's the key. No single group could manage to fill the void left by the Mughals and unify the entire subcontinent. So India became this really complex chessboard of competing regional powers.
And it's right into this fragmented, competitive landscape that the East India Company steps. And by this point, they're not just a trading firm anymore. Oh no. They're deploying a clever and frankly, ruthless strategy for total dominance.
Their strategy was brilliant, really, in a multifaceted way. First, they raised their own private army. This was an absolute game changer, and it was mostly made up of local Indian soldiers. Then, they used economic incentives, basically making it more profitable for local rulers to side with them than against them. And finally, and this is crucial, they used the massive power of Britain's Royal Navy to knock their European competitors out of the water.
Okay, so if you had to point to one single moment where everything, and I mean everything, changed, this would be it. 1757, the Battle of Plassey. The company's army, led by this guy, Robert Clive, defeats the rulers of the incredibly wealthy Bengal region and their French allies. This one victory handed the company immense resources and actual territorial control. It was a turning point of epic proportions.
And get this, just over a decade after that massive win at Plassey, their main European rival is just gone, out of the picture. The French East India Company collapses. And that meant the British were basically the last European power standing in India with the resources and the sheer ambition to dominate the subcontinent.
But, as you can imagine, this kind of unchecked power couldn't last forever. The company's rule was destined to end. The British government itself was going to step in. But not before one final, incredibly violent, and absolutely pivotal event.
So after 100 years of company rule, all the resentment that had been building up, resentment over social reforms, economic exploitation, just a total loss of sovereignty, it finally boiled over. The Indian Rebellion of 1857 was a massive, bloody uprising, and it shook the very foundations of the company's power to its core.
Now, the rebellion ultimately failed, but it had these profound consequences. First, the last remnants of the Mughal Empire were just swept away, gone forever. And second, the British government back in London decided, okay, a private company can no longer be trusted to govern a territory this massive. So power was officially transferred from the company to the British Crown. And that's when the era of the British Raj officially began.
And all of this brings us full circle, right back to our original question. Now that we've laid out the history, we can really see the key factors that made this unimaginable conquest actually happen.
So, what's the final answer? Well, it was never just one thing. It was the interaction between all these different factors. That perfect storm we talked about. You had the power vacuum in India, at the exact same time that European rivals like France failed to compete, just as British military and industrial power was peaking, and all of it was exploited by the incredibly shrewd and, let's face it, ruthless East India Company. It was that combination of events that made the impossible possible.
It just goes to show you how history can hinge on these very specific moments and conditions, doesn't it? I mean, what if the Mughal Empire had never weakened? Or what if another Indian power, like the Marathas, had managed to unify the subcontinent in its place? A few different decisions here and there, and the entire history of both Britain and India could have been radically different. It really leaves you to think about the world that might have been.